Our world is filled with natural wonders. As with other naturalists fueled with curiosity, I've endeavored to understand as much as I can about these wonders. A timeless and invaluable tool that most naturalists use is a journal. A journal not only helps the naturalist to reflect upon his observations, but protects the observations from the human memory, which is notorious for distorting and neglecting details. I am passionate about my studies and love to share with anybody willing to engage. This is why I create and share my nature journal. I feel like I say this every week lately, but the activity is still increasing. Here's a ruby-crowned kinglet. They are fairly common in our woods, but very rarely do they sit this still so that we can get a good look at them. The sanctuary is filled with the songs of birds seeking out mates. Most of the juncos will head north to breed, but some may still nest here. Bluebirds are beginning to nest, and it looks like this pair has chosen a nest box.
Definitely not.
This male bluebird is standing on top of this box with this fluffy piece of nesting material, perhaps to see if the female likes this spot.
I think. Might just be a downy feather.
I think that's a yes. A pair of mallards nested in this vernal pond last summer, albeit unsuccessful. Maybe they're thinking about it again. Lydia is still hard at work incubating her eggs. Meanwhile, Roddy's busy protecting the pond and taking the time to take a bath. Even with all the increased nesting activity, I still find time to appreciate the trees. Judging by the size of this beech and the maturity of the bark, it's probably about 200 years old. Our oldest trees are along the borders of what used to be neighboring properties. Unlike the rest of the forest, border trees were often spared from loggers. That line down the trunk is signs that it was once hit by lightning, and you can see the exposed roots, which means the forest soil must have eroded around it. Here's an aspen tree infected with insects. Not sure what kind of insects they are, but they are causing significant damage to this tree. Because of this damage, we decided to cut this tree down and feed it to the beavers. And while harvesting this food for the beavers, we noticed a patch of reindeer lichen. We've been in this field many times before, but have never noticed it. It's nice to find surprises in a field you thought you knew really well. I took a little vacation this week to the Allegheny River in Pennsylvania. A 3-day paddling trip with a couple of my buddies. I included our paddle in my journal because the ecology of Pennsylvania is so similar to that of central New York's.
Got your binocs ready? Are we gonna be able to get up?
We began paddling Saturday afternoon. The weather was cool and dreary, but comfortable and dry. The region had some serious rain earlier in the week, so the river was running fast and high. It was an easy paddle. We went a few miles before our first break.
Can both of us? Where should I go? This.
From this island, you can see how fast the water is moving.
Catch fish the old-fashioned way.
What are you gonna? Some garlic mustard.
Not to mention some of the same plants we have at the sanctuary.
You can cook with it.
Here's some garlic mustard and some toothwort that's in bloom. And the sediment covering these violets reiterate what we were told about the river flooding everything the previous night. And in a puddle, we saw one lone whirligig beetle. Whirligigs usually congregate together, so a lone one is unusual.
Surprised he doesn't have any
The
buddies.
flooding probably broke up the congregation.
Perhaps.
When it warms up, I'm sure it will fly to find more friends.
You're wrong. I'm just
And it appears that a raccoon's been on the island,
intuition.
at least at some point in the past.
Right, raccoon.
But we didn't stay long there. We still had a few miles to get to camp.
Bomb coming in hot.
But as the sky started clearing up, we took some time to watch the tree swallows.
Oh, either.
And the turkey vultures.
Going down. Which is 6 miles.
And before we knew it, we were at Stewart's Island, our first camping spot. We pulled up and started exploring the island a little bit. Lots of flowers there. And even more exciting, moss and lichens. And then we noticed some bear scat. And some fresh bear tracks. We had just finished setting up camp, and were getting ready to start cooking dinner, when we saw the bear leaving the island. I knew bears could swim, but this was the first time I'd ever seen one in action. We were a little afraid that it left because we showed up, but that ended up not being the case. At least we think. There was a bigger bear on the same island. It ended up popping its head into camp later on. We had to scare it off.
Do we need to help?
I always feel kind of bad about doing that, but we can't allow bears to raid our cooler. While this bear was crossing, we were all afraid for a few seconds it wasn't going to make it.
About turning around and then decided.
But the bear did keep it together and make it to the bank on the west side of the river. When it got out, we could see how small it was, probably only in its second year of life. It makes you appreciate how dangerous life is for wild animals and the daily struggles they face. We were all relieved to see that this bear had a happy ending, at least for now.
Oh, that's so little one. I lost him. I lost him in the binoculars. Oh, he's walking along that bank there. Is he limping? Stop. Did you hear that? There he goes. That's fucking awesome, dude.
Not long after, we enjoyed a beautiful sunset before settling in for the evening. We woke up to a beautiful foggy morning. There was a lot of bird activity, but none of the warbler migrants I was hoping for. And as soon as the sun was high enough to burn off all the fog, we were on our way.
Let's just get. View.
After an 18-mile paddle that day, we set up our second camp. Water was being released from the Kinzua Dam, so we kept a close watch on how high it was rising. We had an emergency evacuation plan in case we got flooded out. By morning, the water had risen about 1.5 feet, but still we remained dry. There's nothing quite like relaxing by a warm fire after a long day before turning in for the evening. The next morning, it was a quick 4-mile paddle to our final destination.
T-shirt or something, and then
I should mention that when out in the wilderness, we become a direct part of a natural ecosystem. I believe it's important to remember that we are just visitors in another's home.
if you want.
Having an impact on the environment is inevitable, but we can and try to minimize that impact as much as possible. We clean up after ourselves, including food scraps, which could teach potentially dangerous animals to associate humans with food. And when collecting firewood, if we see it's colonized by fungus or insects, we leave it lie where it is. It was a great trip, but I was looking forward to returning to work the next day. I knew we had a busy schedule ahead of us. that's it for this week. Thanks everyone for supporting us. And if anyone ever has questions, comments, or would like a tour, you can find our information on the website.